Are you with this person out of love or out of fear of being alone? Think about it for a second. Not the answer you'd say out loud, the answer you feel in your gut when the question lands. Because there's a huge difference between choosing someone and clinging to someone. And most of the time, we pretend not to see that difference. Leave your like down below and stick with me until the end. There's a fear that operates silently within many people. A fear that doesn't appear as fear. It appears as love, as care, as, I can't imagine my life without this person. The fear of loneliness has a very convincing voice. It knows how to perfectly imitate the feelings you want to feel. And the problem isn't that you feel this fear. The problem is when it starts making decisions for you. When you stay in a relationship not because it makes you happy, but because the alternative seems unbearable. The emptiness you imagine feeling alone seems greater than the emptiness you already feel next to this person. And so you stay, not out of love, but because you can't face the silence. There's a very common confusion we rarely admit. The confusion between needing someone and loving someone. Emotional attachment and real connection look very similar on the outside. Both make you think about the person all the time. Both make you not want to lose that. But on the inside, they are completely different things. Real connection grows when you are at peace with yourself and choose to share that with another person. Attachment born of fear grows precisely where there is emptiness. It fills the space you can't fill yourself. When you're with someone and think, I wouldn't survive if this ended, it's worth asking, what exactly do you think will end along with it? The person? Or the only antidote you found for your own inner loneliness? Because that changes everything. To love someone is to want that person to exist in your life. To need someone is to be afraid of what happens when they no longer exist. The root of this almost always lies in a place we don't like to visit, childhood. Not because it's cliché to talk about it, but because it's real. When a child grows up in an environment where affection was unpredictable, where love had to be earned, where abandonment, physical or emotional, was a real possibility, they learn something very specific. That being alone is dangerous. That depending on someone is the only way to feel safe. This learning doesn't disappear when you grow up. It transforms. It becomes a pattern. It becomes a tendency to seek in adult relationships what was missing back then. Stability, presence, the feeling that you matter to someone. And so you enter a relationship carrying an old hunger. A hunger that no one in the present can completely satisfy, because it comes from a time that has already passed. But you keep trying, you keep clinging, you keep confusing intensity with depth, and then the cycle begins. The more emptiness you feel inside, the more you cling to the outside. The more you cling, the less room there is to ask yourself if what you're holding on to still makes sense. The relationship starts to function like an anesthetic. It doesn't solve the pain, it just numbs it for a while. And when the effect wears off, you need more attention, more confirmation, more presence. You start monitoring for signs, interpreting silences, feeling anxious when the other person doesn't respond quickly enough. And the guilt you feel for this, that feeling of, why am I like this, makes you cling even tighter. Because now you also need to prove you're capable of being loved. The cycle feeds itself. Emptiness generates attachment. Attachment generates anxiety. Anxiety generates more emptiness. And amidst all this, the relationship stops being a place of connection and turns into a place of survival. You're no longer in it by choice. You're in it because leaving seems impossible. Low self-esteem doesn't mean you don't value yourself in words. It means that, in practice, you accept less than you deserve because you're afraid that less is all you'll ever get. When someone treats you with indifference, you explain. When someone makes you feel small, you justify. When the relationship clearly isn't good for you, you stay. Because staying seems safer than risking having nothing. There's a twisted logic to it, but it makes emotional sense. If I'm already used to receiving little, at least I know what to expect. The unknown hurts in a different way. And low self-esteem convinces you that the unknown will be worse, that you won't find something better, that maybe you don't even deserve it. Self-deception is sophisticated. It doesn't look like a lie. It looks like love. You say, I'm staying because I care. You say, we have history. You say, things will get better. And maybe all of that is partly true, but there's a layer beneath these justifications that you rarely name. The dread of facing the silence of your own room. The dread of having to answer, alone, the question of who you are when you're not someone's partner. Self-deception is so efficient because it uses real materials, good memories, genuine moments, true affection, to build a narrative that justifies staying. And as long as that narrative holds up, you don't have to feel what lies just beneath it. There comes a moment, and it arrives differently for each person, when being alone stops being the end of the world and starts being a possibility. Not a tragedy, a possibility. This doesn't happen because you suddenly became strong. It happens because the exhaustion of clinging accumulates, and at some point, the burden of staying starts to outweigh the fear of leaving. That's when something changes. When you start to notice that the loneliness you felt within the relationship was heavier than the loneliness you feel alone. That there's a difference between being alone and feeling lonely. That you can be in a bed with another person and feel completely abandoned, and you can be completely alone and feel whole. This turning point isn't about leaving someone. It's about starting to choose yourself, without drama, without heroism, with an honest exhaustion and a clarity that takes a long time to arrive, but once it does, it doesn't leave. You don't need to cling to avoid feeling lonely. You need to find yourself first. It's not advice. It's just what I believe after understanding how this cycle works. The company you miss the most isn't someone else's. It's your own.